Hello and welcome to another quick video from me, this tutor. And in this video, I'm going to tutor you through how to write a really good answer for the explain question when doing AQA Elizabethan topic. And in particular, we're going to be explaining about trade and exploration. So in this video, we're going to look at Elizabethan foreign policy and do the explain question. So we'll need to revise our knowledge on trade, exploration, maybe a little bit wider foreign policy, maybe also even society and how trade and exploration impacted society, so we can explain a wide range of impacts. So find these pages in my revision guide and revise them carefully, and then come back here for a quick quiz, and then we'll go through how to write a really good answer. Okay, so here's a quick quiz on trade and exploration. So have a look at those 8 questions, see if you can find the answers in the revision guide by looking around the pages and then filling in the answers. So when you're ready, come back and we'll go through the answers. Okay, and here are the answers then. So who circumnavigated the globe from 1577 to 1580? And of course, that's Sir Francis Drake. Now, you need to know some really good facts about that. Places he discovered, places he went, how much money he earned. So that's in the next set of questions. So let's have a look at those in a bit more detail. So what did Drake name the new colony set up in North America? So New Albion or New Haven. So he started to establish England as an imperial nation, taking over places, starting to build its own empire like Spain was in Southern America, and claiming places like New Albion. Obviously, Raleigh would do similar, as we'll find out in a minute. He also earned huge amounts of money, so £600,000. Might not sound so much today, but that was a huge amount of money. For instance, Elizabeth earned normally around about 100,000 to 150,000 when she asked for extra parliamentary tax. And the amount of money Elizabeth gained was between 100 and 150,000 pounds. So it was like a parliamentary subsidy for Elizabeth and doubled her income for the year. So it was a huge amount of money. Also, other members of the Privy Council nobility like Hatton had invested in it and also gained huge amounts of money. And you could think about the impact of this being that this money is going to come into England and be used for maybe fashionable items, house building, investing in things, even as far as theatre companies, even you could stretch this answer. But definitely it's going to be important about trading companies as well. And we know that Elizabeth obviously sets up a trading company using this money, as we'll talk about in a moment. Which English sailor in 1564 was first to start capturing, transporting and selling slaves in England? So unfortunately for John Hawkins, he has that reputation, that distinction, but he does go on to better things with developing the British Navy and helping England defeat the Armada with his race-line ships that he designs, and obviously he becomes a significant part of the English Navy. Who tried unsuccessfully to set up an American settlement in 1587? All the people disappeared. So this is Walter Raleigh, and Raleigh is a slightly different privateer and explorer to Sir Francis Drake. He doesn't really go on the expeditions himself, but he gets the money in court and he gets that money invested into privateers to go out doing things like raiding the Spanish and finding places to explore. But he is not an adventurer on the oceans necessarily. What was the name of this settlement that was set up by Walter Raleigh? It was Roanoke. And then let's move on to trading companies, shall we? So which company did Elizabeth allow to be set up to trade with India? So this is the East Indies Company. Now, didn't necessarily start off trading with India per se necessarily. We're talking East Indies. So some of those islands and places that Drake had discovered on his journey around the globe, building those relationships in the East. Then the company set up in 1581 using the money from Drake's expeditions. So the Levant Company to trade with Turkey and the Ottomans was set up using that money. So Elizabeth is investing the money in making more money. All right, so we always look at these questions in a bit of detail before we start answering them, and we come up with a success criteria about what we think needs to be done to achieve a good answer to this question. And if you've seen my religion video already, and you would have seen some of the criteria for this, but if you haven't, here's the first time you've seen this criteria. Let's think about the question. So it's got an explain what was important. It's 8 marks. So what skills do you think you need to show? Pause now and have a think about the skills. So firstly, you need to explain using your P or paragraphs. It is an explain question. So we need to set up an argument first of all. So one way Elizabeth's trade was important was, and we need to create an argument. Then we back up the argument with an example, and then we explain the impact. So this is not an impact on Elizabeth, although it could be. It could be an impact about Elizabethan society. Could be about nobles and gentry earning money. It could be about entertainment, theatre, fashion. We can link to all sorts of social ideas. Of course, we can link to foreign policy as well. So there are trade and explorations upsetting Spain. So we've got all sorts of areas we can look at. It's not just going to be Queen Elizabeth and how she thinks about it. We need to explain 2 ideas for 6 marks with just basic P paragraphs, point, evidence, explain. If we want to get to 7 or 8 marks, we need to explain some wider ideas. So use a furthermore and try and explain a bit more widely. So let's develop a plan for this. So similar to the religion video, we're developing a table of our ideas. So make a point first of all, then give your evidence, then explain. So have a look through the revision guide, see if you can find some sensible points. You could divide it into trade and exploration if you like, and then give some evidence, and then think about the impact. Remember, social, foreign policy, political, economic, there's lots of impacts here. It is not just limited to trade and exploration. Okay, so here's my ideas. Then I've come up, firstly, my first point is increased wealth. Of course, Drake's raids, Nombra de Dios, £3 million in modern money, circumnavigation of the globe, £600,000, which is, pretty much 6 times the national budget. Explanation and impact. So Elizabeth could pay off her debts. Now, this isn't just, those ideas are not connected across. Obviously, Elizabeth earned her money from the circumnavigation of the globe. She could pay off the national debt. She could start investing in things like the Levant Company. Also, nobles had invested and gained huge wealth, and you could explain how they're going to use that wealth. They are also going to invest in companies. They're going to trade. They're going to be investing in fashionable items, building new homes. What are they going to do with that money, and how's that going to benefit society more widely? Secondly, you can think about more trade and jobs. So trade companies like Levant, Eastlands, India, they're all set up based upon exploration. So this is going to provide jobs for gentry and nobles. So Finch led the East India Company, and you're going to have more trade. So gentry people are obviously off exploring, like Drake and Riley, but more people are going to be on boats. They're going to be traveling around. They're going to be setting up merchant companies. It's going to equal lots more money flowing into the country. So how are we going to write this then? We're going to obviously do our appeal paragraph, as we suggested already. So we're going to say something like, one way that Elizabethan trade and exploration was important was that it created money. Yeah, so we're going to make a point. Then we're going to give some evidence. For example, Drake did this, Riley did this. We're going to give some ideas about money making. And we're going to say this was important because, and explain the impact, led to trade companies, led to this, led to that. We're going to give the impacts. And then furthermore, we give a wider idea. Maybe go to a much wider social impact and develop this. Fashionable homes, fashionable items, theatres, things a bit more widely that people can invest in and spend money on, because Elizabethan England has a golden age of trade and exploration and trade and money. Okay, so let's work this one through together, shall we? So one way that Elizabethan trade and exploration was important was that, okay, what's your opening point? So pause me now and give your opening point. Okay, so here is my idea. So I've said one way that Elizabethan trade and exploration was important was that it increased wealth in England. Really simple, yeah? So we talked about money making as our first part of our plan. So let's give an example now. So for example, and give some ideas of the money making of Drake, and you could try and put in Riley a little bit if you want to as well. But pause now and give an example. Okay, so I've said, for example, in 1572, Sir Francis Drake captured £3 million worth of modern money with his Nombra de Dios raid. Later in 1577-1580, he raided many Spanish ships in cities like Lima, captured £600,000 worth of treasure. This was important to Elizabethan England because, right, so now explain. So what's the impact? You can explain the impact on Elizabeth, how she has money, what she does in terms of trade companies. We had that as our impact, didn't we? So try and explain the impact of this now. How is this benefiting and impacting Elizabethan England? Okay, so I've said this was important to Elizabethan England because Drake was sponsored by the Queen as a privateer and had to give the Queen money, gave her £600,000 for his exploits. This doubled the Queen's budget for the year, and she paid her debts and funded the development of the Levant Company to increase trade with Turkey. And you could obviously give another sentence you want about how this led to gentry people getting jobs and trade. You could say a little bit more. Then link to a furthermore. Try and give another idea about all these rich people earning huge amounts of money off this expedition. So people like Hatton and rich people who've invested in this trip have also got lots of money. What are they going to do with that money? How's that going to benefit Elizabethan England? So give an idea now. So furthermore, and explain an idea. Okay, so I said, furthermore, exploration was important as it increased the wealth of nobility. People like Christopher Hatton gained huge profits from Drake's raids. This meant that wealthy nobles could invest in building new fashionable homes, theatres, and new trading companies. This would help develop the jobs all across parts of society. Yeah, so it's really quite simple, and you don't need necessarily to give lots of facts and examples in there. You just need to show your understanding of that's what happened and explain your idea. So now let's give a second idea. So I'm not going to talk you through this bit by bit. You're going to have a look at the writing frame, see if you can come up with an idea. So we had in our plan about trade and companies setting up and how also that's giving opportunities and money. So see if you can give at least a simple P paragraph or maybe a furthermore if you can. Okay, so pause me now and away you go. Okay, so I said another way that Elizabethan trade and exploration was important was that it led to increased trade and jobs in England. For example, Elizabeth set up many trade companies like the Levant Company, trade with Turkey, Eastlands, trade with Scandinavia, and East India Company, trading with the Indies. This was important to Elizabethan England because nobles and gentry were needed to lead the trade companies, and this helped create more wealth for these people. For instance, Sir Ralph Fitch was given the job of leading the East India Company. Also, Elizabeth could use trade monopolies to reward nobles and increase their wealth. In particular, Essex was given a sweet wine monopoly. Furthermore, exploration helped the gentry gain social mobility up the great chain of being. Okay, here's a nice idea to think about. Due to better jobs and wealth. For instance, Riley and Drake were both from farming gentry families, but rose to be knights of the realm that could attend Elizabethan court. So you've got a nice idea of a wider impact there and the impact on social mobility, which is a useful thing to consider. Okay, well, if you did find that useful, then do have a look at my revision guide here. I've got some example pages for you. So I packed the revision guide full of simple note form revision slides that you can just revise and read through, but also it's packed full of other questions that you can work through and practice all your skills. So I've got all types of questions covered, and as you can see, I've got the latest site study question in there as well for you to work through. So also, if you found this useful, I've got more AQA revision guides to take a look at these and have a look at my link in the YouTube video to find your way to my Amazon page if you want to find out more. Also, if you just want free help, then do subscribe to my channel. I've got lots more videos provide help for you. Well, bye bye for now.